The Battle of Medina Ridge was a decisive tank battle fought on February 27, 1991, during the Gulf War, between the U.S. 1st Armored Division and the 2nd Brigade of the Iraqi Republican Guard Medina Luminous Division outside Basra, Iraq. Medina Ridge is the name American troops gave to a low-rise, approximately 7 miles long. The battle, which was waged over approximately 2 hours, was the largest tank battle of the war and the largest tank battle in American history. It took place west of Phase Line Kiwi, east of Phase Line Smash, and north of Phase Line Grape. Phase lines are map references occurring every few kilometers used to measure progress of an offensive operation. History. The 1st Armored Division, commanded by Major General Ron Griffith, consisted of some 3,000 vehicles including 348 M1A1 Abrams tanks. The 1st Armored Division's cavalry squadron, 1-to-1 cavalry, made contact with the Medina Division and informed the division commander of the location of the enemy forces. 1st Armored Division's 2nd Brigade saw major action in this battle and was commanded by Colonel Montgomery Meigs. 3rd Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, commanded by Colonel James Riley, replaced 1st Armored Division's 1st Brigade for the duration of the war and was also heavily involved in the battle. Medina Ridge was one of the few battles during Desert Storm in which American forces encountered significant Iraqi resistance and found it extremely difficult to advance. The Iraqi forces were well deployed such that they could not be seen by American forces advancing until after they had cleared the top of the ridgeline. This defilade position was intended to give the Iraqis protection from the powerful long-range direct fire of the M1 Abrams tanks and the M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. During the battle, the American forces destroyed 186 Iraqi tanks and 127 armored vehicles. Only 4 Abrams tanks were hit by direct fire. All 4 were lost. 38 of the Iraqi tanks were destroyed by U.S. Army R-64 Apaches and U.S. Air Force A-10 Thunderbolt IIs. The 75th Field Artillery Brigade and Battery B, 25th Field Artillery, the division's target acquisition battery, conducted counter-artillery fire missions and destroyed 2 Medina Field Artillery battalions in the process. The 2nd Battalion, 1st Field Artillery Regiment also eventually participated in these counter-battery missions. Although the Iraqis used a correct defensive tactic by deploying their armor behind the ridge, this was not properly repeated through the rest of the war. In one incident, an Iraqi commander attempted to repeat what had been done at Medina but mistakenly deployed his armor too far from the ridgeline. This gave the American units the upper hand. As the Abrams tanks specialize in long-distance kills, the Chobham armor is extremely resistant to long-range fire. The American height advantage also reduced the effective range of the Iraqi tanks and presented the Iraqi gunners with a targeting situation for which they were undertrained. Nevertheless, the Iraqis had fought hard, shooting down an A-10 Thunderbolt II and 2 R-64 Apache helicopters and causing much confusion among the attackers that forced the U.S. commander to order all his armored battalions to withdraw to a safe distance towards the end of the fighting. In early April 1991, Colonel Montgomery Meigs, the commander of the 2nd Brigade of the 1st Armored Division, paid his respects to his former enemy's Medina Division, reporting that these guys stayed and fought. The same newspaper articles notes that the Americans had more than 100 battle tanks on hand, about the same as the total number of tanks in the Iraqi force. But the Americans had some noteworthy advantages over the Iraqis, like attack helicopters and A-10 anti-tanks planes. The Iraqis had no support aircraft. Task Force 1-37. In a short 6-month period during 1990 and 1991, the 1st Battalion, 37th Armor, was alerted for deployment to Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, deployed all of its personnel and equipment over 3,000 miles from an already forward-deployed location, fought a major battle against a well-equipped enemy over terrain they had never trained on, and then redeployed the unit to its home station. The 1st Battalion, 37th Armor from Rose Barracks, Vilsik, Germany, commanded by LTC Edward L. Dyer, was alerted for deployment to the Persian Gulf on 8 November 1990. 1-37 Armor was the 1st Brigade unit from Vilsik to deploy. 1-37 Armor was attached to the 3rd Bulldog Brigade from Warner Barracks in Bamberg, Germany, under their former commander, Colonel Daniel Zanini. A small advance party deployed on 14 December and the main body began departing on 26 December. By 30 December, the battalion had arrived in Saudi Arabia. Vehicles and equipment which had been shipped from ports in Europe began to arrive on 4 January, and by 12 January all the equipment had arrived. When hostilities commenced on 15 January 1991, the battalion was in the process of closing the last elements into TAA Thompson. The next month was spent task organizing, training, rehearsing, and preparing for the ground war. On 24 February, Task Force 1-37 crossed the line of departure as part of 7 Corps attack against Iraqi forces. On 25 February, the battalion attacked and seized the division headquarters of the Iraqi 26th Infantry Division, destroying 4 armored vehicles, 8 air defense weapons, and captured over 40 enemy prisoners of war. After attacking all day on 26 February, TF-1-37, part of 3rd Brigade, 1st Armored Division, made contact with the brigade of the Tawak al-Nahr Armored Division of the Republican Guard Forces Command, which had established a defensive position to protect the flank of the RGFC and facilitate their escape from Kuwait. After a 30-minute firefight, TF-1-37 was ordered to assault the enemy position. The assault, conducted at night, in driving rain, resulted in the destruction of 26 T-72 tanks, 47 armored personnel carriers and a handful of other vehicles, as well as the capture of over 100 EPWs. TF-1-37 suffered the loss of 4 M1A1 tanks destroyed and 6 personnel wounded in action. After consolidation and reorganization, the task force continued the attack throughout the night of 26-27 February, re-establishing contact with the RGFC at approximately 0530, the 27th of February. The task force continued to attack, fighting numerous engagements with elements of multiple Iraqi divisions throughout the 27th and into the morning of the 28th of February. At 0800 local time, the 28th of February, the task force established a hasty defensive position astride the Iraq-Kuwait border. During the last 28 hours of the attack, TF-1-37 destroyed an additional 31 tanks, 31 BMPs, numerous other APCs, air defense weapons and trucks, and captured over 200 EPWs. 4 days after the ceasefire, TF-1-37 moved 9 miles further into Kuwait. 2 missions were conducted to destroy additional enemy weapons, ammunition and equipment, bury enemy remains, and to recover the 4 M1A1s which had been destroyed on 26 February. On 24 March, TF-1-37 moved back into Iraq and established a defensive position in the vicinity of the Rumaila oil fields. For the next 3 weeks, task force missions centered on refugee assistance and security operations. On 10 April, TF-1-37 began movement to the rear assembly area in the vicinity of King Khalid Military City, Saudi Arabia. By 13 April, the task force had closed into the RAA and preparations began for the redeployment of the unit to Germany. On 16 August 1991, the 1st Brigade, 1st Armored Division was redesignated as the 3D Brigade, 3D Infantry Division.